ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. Happy Saturday. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening here today. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is where you can like and follow all social media platforms down below. Subscribe to the YouTube channels of the Snake Sports Talk Show, including the home of the show. That is the Spotlight Sports Network. And also follow me on Spotify for all of the latest podcast episodes. So glad to be here with all of you guys. I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe and healthy. Oh, man. I've got a lot to talk about on my plate. But hey, it's exciting. We have a lot of stuff going on from this past week, and even on what's going on this whole weekend. So lots and lots of NBA action, Stanley Cup hockey playoff. The playoffs going on. I'm so stacked. I don't even know what to do with myself. And I've been saying this to all of my colleagues, and I've been saying it to a lot of the fans. I mean, it feels like Christmas having sports back, and I'm really, really excited. I'm really happy for it. And this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a really, really good show. I'm happy for it, and I am so glad to be here with all of you guys. Taking the time to be here, checking in on the show. Really do appreciate you all coming on. So, and just real quick, because right now we're not making the huge announcement yet, but we do have something special in the works as of right now, and we're keeping you guys updated as we go. And until everything is finalized, everything is ready to go, we'll be able to make the big announcement for you guys. So stay tuned on that here on the network as well. So with that being said, let's dig in, shall we? So the NBA playoffs currently are going on, and it's looking pretty interesting. I mean, I caught a lot of games, and I think watching a lot of these games really points out to several things. And one of those things I think is one of the most important, that what separates the boys from the men. And even in playoff situations. So, we got superstars all around. I mean, we got Luka, we got Kawhi, we got Donovan Mitchell, we got LeBron. We got so many superstars all in one place. But what is one of those things that most of those superstars always have to have? Well, that's always having they're always having a second best player. A duo. Guy that really makes this work and really makes it gel. So while I was watching this whole playoff run and watching a lot of these games, and I mean, if you guys had seen my live stream last night, I was live streaming the Clippers and the Mavericks game, and I thought that was a great game. All the way until the very end when Luka ended up getting hurt and was sidelined throughout the rest of the night. But looking at the NBA playoffs and all of these duos here, you got LeBron and Anthony Davis with the Lakers. You got Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum in Portland. Luka and Porzingis in Dallas. Kawhi and Paul George with the Clippers. There are so many duos here in this bubble and in this structure in the playoffs that it becomes clear to me that having one of your best players and your second best players is the most important thing that structures every team, especially when it comes to potentially winning a championship. I mean, I've been saying this over and over and over again. And we watched it during The Last Dance, when we watched the documentary of Michael Jordan and how he couldn't be able to win those championships without his second best player, Scottie Pippen. I mean, we could argue that's probably one of the best duos in basketball we've ever seen. And there are some notables. Karl Malone and John Stockton. Okay, there are a lot of notables that you can agree and you can argue that they're all around in this league. But it's all leading up to one expectation. You can't win a championship by yourself. Carrying the load leading the team to the playoffs and leading them to the NBA Finals, winning a championship. You can't do that as a one-man show. You can't. And there were a bunch of duos who I've watched, and these are the only ones that I could tell you really, really do work. First of all, look at Portland with Dame and CJ. Okay, Dame has shifted his game to where he is the second best shooter outside of Steph Curry in this league. And he's capable of making those shots, whether it's three-point shots, whether it's within the paint. He's willing to make those shots. And CJ McCollum, when times kind of get rough or there's situational play where he has to step up in all of those situations, he's going to take a shot as well when he has the open opportunity. Inside the paint, beyond the arc, any way that he can. Let's look at Utah. Donovan Mitchell, he was red hot in all three of these games. They only took one loss because somewhere in the middle of that game, they just lost the momentum. They lost the momentum against Denver. But yet, Mitchell was able to put up the points. Last night, Mike Conley stepped up in a huge role for the Jazz. Put up X amount of points. And he set a career high of the amount of threes made in a playoff game. And Mike Conley, mind you, really good veteran. He has playoff experience with Memphis, comes into a Utah system, hopes to bring the best of Donovan Mitchell. I thought that duo tandem was really, really good in that game 3 and all throughout the series. Now, the ones I'm going to point to you are the ones that I look at in this playoff. And the reason why that it is so important with having your number twos there in the game. Let's look at LeBron and Anthony Davis. LeBron, we know, is the Swiss Army knife in the NBA. Okay, he does everything. He makes shots. He blocks shots. He also is the best ball distributor. That's why he led the league in the assists this year. And he's in the running role of potential MVP. And LeBron knows in all playoff aspects what to expect, what needs to be done, and so on and so forth. But here's the other thing. Anthony Davis, I think, is a very, very good player. Do not get me wrong. Okay? I think he's a very talented player. Yes, he's had some injuries in the past. But here's the one thing that really bothers me. Is AD, when we're in the fourth quarter of play, has a tendency to disappear. Why? We don't know why he has the tendency to disappear in some of these games. And that is something where the Lakers, and I've said this over again, this is where the series is going to go to 7 against Portland, because Portland is not the easiest opponent that you can knock off. They're not. Okay, Portland, of all teams, with the amount of talent that they have, Dame, CJ, Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside, they are not the team to push around because they'll fire back at you with all cylinders and they will beat you in every single game. And the Lakers with Anthony Davis, he's got to show up in the fourth quarter. He has to, and that is where when I look at this Lakers starting 5 and even looking up onto this bench, it's not going to be an easy series for them. That's why I have them in 7. And to be honest, I have Portland taking the series. How about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George? Kawhi looks red hot with the Clippers. But then we're looking at Paul George and we're going, what the hell is going on with this game? He's taking a lot of shots within the paint and within the arc, and none of them are sinking. So when that happens, Kawhi now has to force his upper hand to really give the Clippers the win. Now, the bench, by the way, was very impressive. Oh my God. Shamet ended up putting up a lot of really good points. Montrezl Harrell, important minutes on the floor. Marcus Morris, surprisingly, a guy that I would look at as a very, very good defensive catalyst, he put up some points himself. And he was really, really good throughout the series. But Paul George is having a lot of struggles on his end. And sometimes that does not look good on your end. And I was always a believer that in second half of games, Paul George would come out with fire. But right now, since game one, he hasn't looked the same. And that is something Doc Rivers truly needs to focus on. Or how about one last tandem? Giannis and Chris Middleton. Okay, you're looking at a Milwaukee team who is defensive, but not the same defensive core since Malcolm Brogdon walked. And Giannis, here's what's funny about this, and I'm going to speculate this more into the next segment, but when I look at Chris Middleton, not a capable number two. I like the kid. I think he's good, but that is something that, Milwaukee really needs to figure out. And Chris Middleton, if you look at him in certain games with the amount of shots and with the amount of, with the amount of decision-making on the floor, not so good. Not so good. It's terrible. It's horrible. And this is what's going to lead me to my segment here with these duos in the NBA, because in this whole entire playoff, you got to make sure that not only your superstar player, but your second best superstar player is on the same page. Why do you think Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen worked so well to win championships? Because think of it this way. Jordan knew he couldn't win championships by himself. Okay, that is a fact. And here's the other thing. When we watched that documentary, Jordan left going to play baseball, and Pippen tried it. I think it was like right up into probably his second year. Tried to at least carry the team. It was horrible. It looked bad. It looked absolutely bad. And that was where Michael Jordan, after everything kind of settled in, came back into basketball, and the Bulls were back to themselves again. And listen, what gets people confused about this is that sometimes, there is a gap about this big between superstars and co-superstars. There is. Okay, the superstars are the ones that those superstars right there. Everybody loves them. They're always out. They're always on television all the time. You get bigger headlines rather than the co-superstars, even though that they are there. And I thought that was the most important thing. Superstars are always the ones that are up on camera. They are always the ones that are right there up on media. They always get the big, the big news and stuff. And then you got the co-superstar, the number twos in the league. Okay, I can already tell you in the playoffs with some of these number twos in this league, there are a couple of them that are very much panning out. Now, I'm not sure what may happen, and hopefully Luka is all right with that rolled ankle that he had last night. But Porzingis and Luka really, really looked great. And Porzingis was putting up the amount of points. Now, granted, Dallas lost. But here's the other thing. Did you really think that the Clippers were going to take this series that easily? No way. I said it that this was going to be the most exciting series to watch in the NBA. And I have this series going in 6. I still do believe the Clippers are going to make it through. But it's not an easy opponent to brush away. It's not. But if Paul George don't get this thing right and get himself back in the game to helping Kawhi, Clippers are going to be in trouble. And they have an expectation after this season. And that is getting to the finals, winning a championship, and getting the first one for the Clippers organization. Truthfully. And here's where I now speculate with Giannis. Okay. There's 3 teams. And I can guarantee you this, that if the Bucks don't win the East, and the way that things are looking, they really need a lot of adjustment. But if the Bucks don't win the East and they don't make it to the finals, Giannis is going to walk. Giannis is truthfully going to walk. I know I'm probably going to get some heat for saying that, but it is the truth. Milwaukee, let me be brutally honest with you. Had Giannis not been in Milwaukee, Milwaukee would never be a franchise. They would never be. They only had a couple of impactful players. Kareem, Ray Allen, Giannis. Those are the only ones that I could tell you are very impactful players within the league. Don't get me started with Monte Ellis. Okay. Monte came out of a system in Golden State, gets traded to Milwaukee, and then the rest of his career shows it from there. Okay. And if it hadn't been for Giannis and for him developing as the player that he is, Milwaukee would not be a franchise. They would not be. Giannis is the only reason that this franchise still to this day keeps the franchise alive. He is saving this franchise. He kind of has that same similar role like Russell Wilson. The only reason why Seattle is a really good franchise is because Russ has tendencies to carry the team. Or you know, and it's the truth. It's the truth behind that. Let me tell you, because there were a lot of speculations about Milwaukee's franchise, and they were going to be the one location that was going to move. And do you know what the location would have been? Vegas. Vegas was going to be on the map for the NBA. Think about it. You got the NBA summer leagues that come out here all the time. And the fans and the location would have been beautiful for a red carpet for a new franchise to come here. I guarantee you Milwaukee was the top team that was going to move. But Giannis prevented that from happening. And so my big thing is that if Giannis leaves, there are 3 teams on my mind that I think Giannis would be perfect for. Number 1, the Miami Heat. Now, here's where I look at it from this point of view. Miami is not an easy team to beat. Jimmy Butler comes into this system with Eric Spoelstra, and he's got a young core, young group, and he really makes this thing happen. And it's surprising because we did not see this all happening with Miami. We really didn't. I think Bam Adebayo is a really good kid. I think he's got a lot of potential on his end. Kendrick Nunn, the rookie, I think he's got a lot more to shift up onto his game, but I think the expectations are great. And there are a lot of real good role players. You know, it's so funny because Miami's games, if you watched all throughout the season, it was all about not just Jimmy, but it was Jimmy and the Heat, which means he had a lot of real good role players. Now, not great ones, whereas, you know, where we see with like the Clippers and so many other teams with really good bolstered bench players, but they had enough. They had enough. And that's what's really kind of, you know, that's what's really helped them in their games. But that's one team that I can see Giannis really making an impact for. I mean, imagine it. Giannis and Jimmy Butler on the same floor, you know, and yes, it may take at least a little bit of talent, but you got to have at least the right players to keep and the ones that maybe they might develop elsewhere. Okay, that's one team. How about, and I've said this over again, Golden State. People are going to give me heat for this one, but do not dismiss this idea. Okay. Golden State, and I watched the lottery picks. Okay. Golden State's got the top pick, but the number 1 pick is the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now we know that they have one of the top picks. You don't think general manager Bob Myers is going to do something about this and is going to potentially make a deal? I think he can. And I think he can, and I think he'll do it at the right price. Think about it. Giannis, Steph, Clay And whether or not, if you're going to keep Draymond Green or not, that is a hell of a group. That is a hell of a group in Golden State. And you've got young players like Eric Pascal and many others that they're trying to bring up. Golden State might have something in their back pockets that we don't see coming. That is one of the reasons I've told a lot of people, don't brush this off. Don't brush off this idea and and then, don't brush off the idea and think about it, because if you thought that the Kevin Durant acquisition was a big thing, look at how huge that this would be. I mean, and you've got not one, but two capable guys on the same floor, Clay and Steph. Like, that is a team that's going to win championships for years, and a lot more than what they would have expected when they had Kevin Durant. And finally, here's one that I also put out, and I'm glad somebody actually pointed this out, but think about Boston. Now, Boston can make a trade, and I'm sure one of those pieces possibly has to be Gordon Hayward and maybe a couple of other role players. But this is a team that Brad Stevens has full control of, and you're watching it all throughout the series. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they are both going off in this series. And it's unfortunate for Philadelphia because, again, this process has never worked for them. Brett Brown is not a strong and capable head coach, and it's really tearing Philadelphia apart. But Boston, when I look at this with a young roster, Kemba Walker also, I thought he was a really good acquisition because this is a veteran player who really brings the best out of all these young players, and that's where he needed to be. Charlotte was not going to do anything for him. But Giannis going to Boston, that is something where the Eastern Conference, they may get more views than where they're getting. Because we know tough competition teams, Boston, Miami, Toronto. I mean, that would be a group I would love to watch all throughout the Eastern Conference. We talk about a stacked Western Conference from here, but I think everybody would be big-time fans if he ended up going to the Eastern Conference. But those are my teams I'd look at. The Miami Heat, Golden State Warriors, the Boston Celtics. If this does not go right for if this doesn't go right for Milwaukee has all the pressures on their backs. This is why they can't lose the series, and they cannot lose the opportunity of making it into the finals. The second that they do, Milwaukee's not going to be a franchise for long. They're not going to be a franchise for long. Once Giannis is gone, it's all going to go downhill from here. And this is why that I mentioned even in the beginning segment, why duos and superstar tandems are the most important thing to win championships. You can't do it by one-man show. That is why Giannis, I would not be mad if he leaves. I would not be, because I think he does deserve the best. And potential, he's in the mindset where he wants to win a championship, but he can't win a championship with the group that he's got. Not if they can't make it to the East. That's where a lot of those expectations do come into play. Coming up next, we're going to take a little small break here, but when I come back, Major League Baseball really does have a tendency to fire me up in so many different ways. But hey, I like it. I get excited for it. I get pumped. But there's one thing that's really ticked me off and that has really heated me up, and that was the whole Fernando Tatis 3-0 count thing. I'm going to explain a lot about all that because as somebody who's watched and played baseball before in my life, like, what gives? And I've ranted about this multiple times in the show and why Major League Baseball is now going to be on a downhill crash course. And I'll explain that coming up here in just a moment here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the Snake Sports Talk Show. So glad for all of you guys to tune in. Man, I am looking at all of the views from here, and look at all of the live streams that we are currently on and all the platforms. We're on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube. We're on Twitter's Periscope. And you know what else? We're also live on Twitch. We're getting a lot of these big-time views, and I really, really do appreciate all of the love and support you guys give. Thank you so much for the subscriptions, the likes. Keep them coming. We've got an expectation here that we're meeting up on the network, and we really, really do appreciate all of the love and support. Thank you so much, guys. So as I said before we went into the break, Major League Baseball always has a tendency to just fire me up on anything. On anything. And they've always done that. I was fired up when it came to the potential return of the season, and then it ended up pushing to 60 games. I was fired up on a lot of things. I was fired up on the Astros. They just keep this fuel of fire with me. But I love it, though. I love it in a good way, because at least it gives me ammunition. It gives me plenty of stuff to talk about. So let me just say this to you and put it in this way, okay? You know, when we get young, talented, potential superstars in this league, and all of them are rookies, myself included, as all fans, we get excited for the next latest and greatest thing. We do. It's much like, it's much like when you get a brand new phone and you're watching all the commercials of all of the features and so much more that they offer. And the NBA, they love their superstars. They love their young kids. Like, look at all of these young superstars. Jason Tatum. Oh, I love Jason Tatum. I mean, the guy packs a lot of punch. Oh, I love Luka Doncic. The guy does it all. I mean, he had a triple-double last night. And he's super talented. The guy's got a lot, he's got a lot of grit, and he's got a lot of energy. Love that. Or we look at Giannis, so we look at a lot of these other young superstars. NBA play, veteran players like LeBron James loves to put his arms around him and loves these kids. Oh, man, I love Luka. I love Giannis. I love a lot of these young kids. Jason Tatum, that kid's going to be he's going to be a star for years. He is. And the NFL also has the tendency to do the same thing. You know, how much of the hype train did we have on Patrick Mahomes? God, we love this kid. Look at how he throws the ball. Look at how he moves out of the pocket. Or Lamar Jackson. He's got fast feet. He almost reminds me of Michael Vick. And he's got a really, really good arm. There are so many talented young players in both the NFL and the NBA that fans and veteran players love watching before their eyes. But for whatever reason, why does baseball seem so bitter when all these young kids come in? Why do they seem so bitter? I can never figure that out. I can never figure that out with Major League Baseball, because growing up, I always loved watching some of these young kids play. And some of these young kids grow into the system. I mean, my God. I've said this over, many times, that, and I have a buddy of mine who plays within the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, and I can't wait for the day till he gets called up. It's unfortunate because COVID hit. It's unfortunate that the pandemic hit. But but the fact of the matter is, I would have been excited to watch him play. The second he gets called up, I'm on the first flight to Pittsburgh, get myself a custom jersey, and man, I would love to watch him play. Because I played alongside with him since high school, and watching him and how he develops his game is something that's so fun to watch. It's like poetry in the making. That's how it usually is with some of these young kids. You write a good piece of poetry, and it makes a lot of sound, makes a lot of noise. It's music to your ears. So I heard this segment on Colin Cowherd the other day on the Herd, and I couldn't have agreed more with what he mentioned about baseball and the direction that they are in when it comes to young superstars. And this is what he had to say about Tatis Fernando Tatis Jr. of the San Diego Padres, great kid, superstar, electric, flashy shortstop. Man, this kid's going to be this kid is going to be a really, really good talent for years. But here was the segment that I really, really loved that I think both him and I could really agree on.
I love that. Baseball's the opposite. They just put a wet blanket on everything. Fernando Tatis Jr. is a great young player for San Diego. He's a great player. Last night, because the game was too lopsided and the pitch count was 3-0, he swung at a ball and he hit a grand slam home run, which would have, that home run for this young superstar gave him the league lead in home runs. He's a fascinating player. He's a star. But everybody was mad that he hit that home run because there's an unwritten rule in baseball. On Tuesdays, I get the remote. Why? That's the unwritten rule in the marriage, huh? In baseball, there's an unwritten rule, which nobody really talks about, but if you're up by 7 runs in the 8th inning, you can't swing. What? Huh? Bases loaded? Yeah, I don't get it either. The unwritten rules of baseball. So this young star does something amazing, and his own manager didn't like it. Here's the Rangers manager after. He didn't like it either.
I think there's a lot of unwritten rules that are, constantly being challenged, I think, in today's game. So, I didn't like it personally. Like I said, the norms are being challenged on a daily basis. So just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not right. But I don't think we liked it as a group.
NFL players are not snowflakes. Hockey players are not snowflakes. NBA players are not snowflakes. They don't protect your feelings. That's not what they do. If you can't get me out, that's a you problem. If you can't stop me dunking, that's a you problem. If I can run in for another touchdown, that is a you problem. Baseball players are apparently 365, 24/7 snowflakes, that they get their feelings hurt when you can't get a guy out and your staff can't stop the talent potentially in the sport. One of the things I love...
You couldn't have put it any better than that. And the one thing that has really pissed me off about baseball, and I've dealt with this multiple times in my life and seeing the game before my very eyes. Here's the thing. When a new young talent does come into the baseball realm, why can't we just greet these kids in open arms? Okay. Have we felt that same way when Francisco Lindor came into the scene? Did we feel like that when Javier Baez, was a big time thing? And he's right. Okay, most of these players in the NFL and the NBA and even in hockey, they don't protect your feelings. They don't. They are going to tell you, they're going to look at you right in the face and they're just going to tell you this: get over it. Get over it. If you don't like it, that is a you problem. And you need to figure it out. You need to fix it quickly. Okay? The NBA, when it comes to stuff like this, listen, Philadelphia, we know, always has problems because they don't have a capable leader in the locker room. And Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, they don't work. And Embiid sometimes, he acts like himself. Whatever the night is, whatever the vibe in the room is, that is Joel Embiid. But then the rest of the squad, they're all on their own. They're a bunch of Chiefs, and there's not a whole lot of Indians. That's how I look at it with Philadelphia. But for the rest of these teams in this playoff, they'll look at you and say, get over it. Get yourself back in the game and figure out a way to help us win. NFL, and here's the funny thing. Would you be shocked if a lot of people started talking mad smack about Baltimore with the amount of times they score and the amount of talent they have? You know what Lamar Jackson's probably going to say? I got arguably the best stats for a running back. Because he's not there to apologize for his talent. So why does people in baseball have to be the same way? Fernando Tatis Jr., I've said this multiple times, I think he's the most electrifying, great, young, talented player that I can't wait to watch for the next 10 years. Why can't we respect that? Isn't that how it usually is when you get young players in? What's the difference? What is the difference? You tell me that. And that is something that when it comes to baseball fans and when it comes to this quote unquote unwritten rule, it just sounds like an excuse to me. Now, I get it in certain things, okay? You know what I would be more pissed off about? How about the times when you got a left-hander in the box, okay, and everybody's playing the shift to the right over by first base line, and you know what's the only hole that's open? Third base. Third base is wide open. And I would be pissed if I look at left-handers and say, why didn't you just take a knock to the left side of the field? Or take a bunt? You do realize you can get a double off of that, right? Those are things I would be livid about. Not that. Okay? And by the way, here's a statistic for you. 90% of the time on 3-0 counts, they're always throwing fastballs. Why? Because pitchers are down in the count. They need a strike. They need something to get themselves back into the game and back into the at-bat. They need to. Okay? The very 10%, which are off-speed pitches, are very rare. Very rare to throw. And unless the pitcher actually hits a strike in the zone, they don't throw that pitch. 90% of the times is always fastballs. Okay? Here's the difference beyond it. He threw a fastball that was right in the wheelhouse of Tatis. It was right in the wheelhouse. Why wouldn't Fernando Tatis Jr. take advantage of that fastball? Why wouldn't he? Okay? It's down the pipe. It looks good. It's a hittable pitch. Take it. Regardless. Or did I forget that we're playing in a shortened season where urgency, it's at its all-time highest versus where it may be at 162 games a season? The Padres are trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to make the postseason. And you're going to complain about an unwritten rule at 3-0, bases loaded? The kid hit a freaking Jimmy Jack. To me, I'd be like, yeah, hell yeah, what a piece. That was right field power, mind you, because right field power is not the strongest for right-handed batters. It's not. Okay, those are usually like 300 average hitters who are smart. Like they put the ball in every single position on the diamond. That's what it is. But for the manager to complain on Texas's end, and then the worst, San Diego's manager didn't like it. Are you serious? This is the part that I don't get. And what really ticks me off about Major League Baseball when it comes to innovation and when it comes to making a change to make the game better. We're not changing tradition, people. We're trying to make the game better. You have a slogan named, "Let the kids play." Are you still living up to that expectation? Because right now, it looks like it's failing. It looks like it is failing miserably. Get over it. Okay? That's what I would tell the Texas manager. Get over it. If you don't like it, throw me a better pitch. Because 90% of the time, it's always a fastball. And when you throw Tatis a cookie like that, he's going to hit it out of the yard, regardless. Get over it. Those are one of the things that I'm like, we're not here to protect your feelings. Okay, we're not. That comes in anything. That comes in relationships. That comes in businesses. When certain things go wrong. Here's what I always say, and I hold myself accountable as well when it comes to certain things in a relationship. If you know things are not right, be brutally honest. And I always tell the men, man up. Fix the situation. If you tried all that you could, maybe it's not meant to be. And move forward with it. But be a man about it. Or how about in businesses? If production is not looking great, figure it out. Don't make decisions based upon emotions. Don't. The second you do, you get lost in this cloud and you can't pull yourself out of it. Baseball, for whatever reason, and I laughed at it when he mentioned it. And he's right. NBA are not snowflakes. Hockey are not snowflakes. And even the NFL are not snowflakes. They don't protect your feelings. Because NFL, you're getting hit left and right, offensively and defensively. NBA, you're getting heavily and tightly guarded. And in hockey, you're getting forechecked. But you got to stand up and be a man about it. Apparently, baseball, they're 24/7, 365 snowflakes. They always act upon their emotions. And it really pisses me off. This is why I'm like, did the NBA, is it me or did Major League Baseball just get softer? They got worse than the NBA did. Because, listen, I know a lot of people have a lot of complaining about certain fouls in the NBA, but at least the NBA, they make up for it. Baseball, for whatever reason, they don't make up for it. They're getting softer every day, which is why I'm like, I'm just going to probably just watch Little League. And listen, my great-grandfather always told me this. And I asked him the serious question. How come he doesn't watch Major League Baseball anymore? He told me one thing, because Major League Baseball, they don't get it. They don't get it. And these kids that are playing in Little League, they have fun. Okay? They play the game right. You know, they play to the certain extent, regardless, written or unwritten rule. Kids are having fun. Let the kids play, right? Well, Major League Baseball seems to be failing at that. And I just think it's ridiculous. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. And they fire me up, and they definitely get me going. But, man, I just love talking about stuff like this. And which is the reason why that when it comes to my perspective of baseball, I don't care what your unwritten rule is. Don't throw me that pitch. Plain and simple. Throw me a better one. If you're going to complain about it, I deal with this sometimes too, because I play in a little bit of a league, and I dealt with people like this. You know, I had somebody complain to me about why I would take a walk in a lead off in the beginning of a game when you're league night. If you don't like that, because I had a lot of people chirp at me. I had one that's like, wow, he's going to take a walk. Or one that said, oh, is he getting paid in this league? Oh, he must be getting paid in this league if he's walking. Guys, if you don't like that, don't throw me a bad pitch. Throw me something that I can hit. If it makes you happy. You know, I had one scenario. One guy, he ended up chirping behind me. And he basically, you know, he was making the big scene out of it. And I took a walk. I didn't care what he had to say. I just got on and I was doing a job. Then it wasn't until the next at bat. And he was just like, oh, hey, highest paid player over here. Highest paid player. He's taking a walk. And you know what happened? Hit a 2-run double. And I went behind him and said, oh, look at that cookie. That cookie was a hittable pitch. Like, come on. Let's be real. Let's be serious. Throw me a better pitch next time if you're going to complain about it. Unbelievable. I'm going to take a break. I had a lot of heat that I had to say about that one, but that was so much fun. I just had to get that one off my chest, but I absolutely love it. But coming up next, I'm going to be talking a little bit more up on hockey because we got the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs coming up, and you guys don't want to end up missing that here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Welcome back here, ladies and gentlemen, to the Snake Sports Talk Show. Really do appreciate you all tuning in here. Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and also up on Twitch. You can follow me on all those live streams as we are currently live here today. Man, I was so I was so fired up, and I was so glad to get that all off my chest. Man, that was something I was waiting for all weekend long. Man, lots and lots of stuff, lots and lots of good stuff. But it's only getting better from here. So I've been watching the NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing. So we've got our round 2 set, and I'm gonna have my I'm gonna end up speculating that a little later on at the bottom end of the show. And there were a lot of really good talents. Now, here's where I'll kind of review all of these games from the first round. First of all, Columbus and Tampa Bay. You knew Tampa Bay needed redemption. You knew Tampa Bay was going to come in and they were going to get redemption against Columbus. We knew that. The offense is quick. Blake Coleman, Nikita Kucherov, Braden Point, and Braden Point is really making himself known in this playoff. But you knew Columbus, they were going to get ups. They were going to lose because they knew that what happened last year, embarrassing Tampa Bay like that, they had a chip on their shoulder. And Tampa Bay got the job done. And so, regardless of anything else, Tampa Bay is still my team that I predicted to making the Eastern Conference, winning it, and going to the Stanley Cup Final. Okay, Boston made it through against Carolina, and I was kind of surprised about that because Carolina came up as this heated team that was ready to win any way that they could. They got a lot of really good defensive and offensive players. Vincent Trocheck, Brady Shea, Sammy Vatanen. They had an awful lot of real good guys, real good cast, but couldn't get the job done against Boston. And Boston looked really strong. And this is without Tuukka Rask. And Jaroslav Halak looked tough. He looked really good and kept Boston within contention. Or how about the Islanders and the Capitals? I'm going to tell you this right now for some of our Washington fans. Braden Holtby doesn't look the same. That was the reason why that I said in the pre-playoff show a while back is because the Caps, the only thing they could hope for is Braden Holtby to get back into his playoff mode. And unfortunately, that didn't end up happening. And New York is not a team that I would sleep on at all. Since the John Tavares departure, they haven't looked more defensive. They haven't looked more offensive, offensively fired up. And their puck distribution is actually really, really good. I mean, you look at guys like Jordan Eberle and so much more. I mean, Anthony Bolivier, he scored up twice and winning up that game. And New York is a very tough team in the Eastern Conference. That's why I'm actually kind of excited to watch that. And Philadelphia, I mean, the Flyers, they made it through last night, winning a close game against Montreal 3-2. And Philadelphia, they're my ghost team in the East that I think could potentially make it to the Stanley Cup Final. Very interesting to watch. My outlook now on the Western Conference. Listen, Vegas is the hottest team going into this second round. They are. Chicago, you already knew, and I said this before. Chicago needed to get rid of all of those old expired contracts. That's Duncan Keith. That's Corey Crawford. You may have 3 or 4 years left of Taves and Kane until eventually you're going to have to pull the strings. But these young kids like Dylan Strome, Alex DeBrincat, Dominic Kubalik, these guys now got to end up elevating themselves. This team has to get younger. Corey Crawford can't do it much like he used to. And Duncan Keith, he's running up on years, still a talented defenseman, but not to the extent that he was years ago. And Vegas took all advantage of it. They clicked on all cylinders and won it, made it to the second round, and they're the hottest team in the Western Conference. How about Vancouver and St. Louis last night? I mean, here's what's interesting about St. Louis, and I was very surprised of it. This looked like an off year for them. They were back and forth. Now, they were very competitive. They're a very competitive team, and I never sleep on St. Louis. But Vancouver is a team on a mission. They acquired so much offense. JT Miller, Tyler Toffoli. You got Brock Besser, Bo Horvat. They are the cheaper version of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Believe it or not. They got a lot of offensive pieces at cheap cost. And the only thing that they're trying to do is make this thing work to getting Vancouver further into playoffs. They're in the second round now, and they're going to be facing against a red-hot Vegas team now. And Vegas, I'll have my outlook on all of these matchups here in just a bit. But I feel like Vegas is going to be very defensive in this game. Colorado and Arizona. I knew Arizona was not going to make it through. Okay, Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, Clayton Keller, lots of these guys didn't really click. And Darcy Kuemper, I think, is a real good goaltender, but he's not elite. Okay, and there were a lot of situational hockey that he didn't come through in. And the one job that you're supposed to do against a team like Colorado is shut down that first line at all costs. But of course, Colorado had tricks up their sleeve. The rest of their lines picked it up. The rest of their lines started scoring, and they made it through. They annihilated Arizona all throughout the series. And that was one that I knew Colorado was not going to waste any time. And then finally, the Dallas game. You know, you had Dallas in pull this up. No. But you had the Dallas Stars, who I said to people, don't sleep on them either. You know, that is a team that's very competitive, and they're very defensive. Ben Bishop is a really good goaltender. I don't care what anybody says. He's a real good goaltender. When I watched that series against Calgary, Calgary's not strong enough. Their offense had been offline all season long. Power plays, not sound. Passing plays, not great. And that was something that was Calgary's downfall. You could see it in Matthew Tkachuk's face when he saw all of those unanswered goals that Dallas was scoring, and it didn't look good for Calgary. But Dallas is the type of team that will attack you any way that they can. That's what got them through. That's what truly got them through in this series. And Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, and a lot of guys have been leading the way, but Ben Bishop has been the big-time catalyst when it comes to elite goaltending and shutting things down. So you've got Dallas against Colorado, Vegas against Vancouver, Philadelphia against let's see. You got Philadelphia against New York, and then you got Tampa Bay against Boston. That's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a fun round 2, but I can't wait to do it on the second hour of the show. And one of them said, trade Johnny Gaudreau. I hate to say that, to be honest, but if it has to, it has to. I mean, if the Calgary really wants to be competitive, sometimes you got to give up those sacrifices. Hour 2 coming up next here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. All right, folks, welcome back here. We are on hour 2 of the Snake Sports Talk Show. We're live in the 702 in Las Vegas, wherever and however you may be watching. Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is where you can like and follow all social media platforms. Subscribe to the home of the Snake Sports Talk Show. That is the Spotlight Sports Network and the Snake Sports Talk Show pages. And also follow me on Spotify for all of the latest podcast episodes that we will be posting up as well. And like I said, we got the latest and greatest thing coming out soon. It is under construction. I can't stop. I can't stop kind of, bringing it out there. But it's not completely finished yet. We're still under construction. It's something that's going to be huge, and it's going to be great. It's going to be great for all of our network fans, and we really do appreciate all of the love and support. Like, subscribe, hit the bell button for all of the latest notifications on future shows. We really do appreciate it, you guys. Man, that was a fun first hour right there. That was such a fun first hour, and I really enjoyed it. There was a lot that needed to be said. Including in the baseball realm, because again, I just think that whole thing with Tatis was ridiculous. Don't swing at 3-0. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it, Tatis. I don't care. Like, if you got a pitch that is in your wheelhouse and you're not going to let that go, hit it. Take it out of the yard. Who cares? Who really, really cares? And that is the one thing that written or unwritten rule, it doesn't matter. We're not here to protect your feelings. Okay. That's ultimately what sports is all about. You want to make the best version of yourself, especially in a leadership role, depending on it. You got to learn how to take the heats. You got to learn how to really endure those situations and make the best out of it and come out in the best way possible. And after all of that happened, by the way, Congratulations to the San Diego Padres. They became the first team ever to hit 4 grand slams in 4 consecutive games, one of them in each of those games. 4 consecutive. I've never seen that before. And a lot of these guys have been red hot. Tatis, Eric Hosmer. Oh, I love watching Eric Hosmer. I think he's a really, really good kid. Machado, I have my opinions about him, but like him or hate him, he's still a damn good player offensively, defensively. Okay. This team, I already know, has some really good offensive hopes, but it's the pitching staff I have a problem with. Outside of Mike Paddock, who really do I have? And that's something where San Diego really needs to make this work if they truly want to be a competitive team in the postseason. But that is something there in the next couple of days, in the next couple of games. We've had some trades, and I haven't really kind of looked truly into the trade deadline, but that is something that I will very much be focusing on for sure. But let me just segue to this, because I did talk a lot about the NBA playoffs, and there's one team in particular that I really do want to focus on, because I just think that right now, the way that they're looking and the way that things are being managed right now is so piss poor. And I know there are a couple of my colleagues that know exactly what I'm going to say, and they know exactly where I'm going with this. But Philadelphia has a serious problem. They have a serious problem with themselves. Brett Brown is not the capable coach for the job. He's not. That is something where I think, to me, if they had to hire a new head coach, I would think either Kenny Atkinson or Mark Jackson. Either one of those two. Kenny Atkinson's not a bad coach. I think that if he goes into the right system where he can build this from the ground up, he can make it work. And Mark Jackson, he definitely deserves a second chance after Golden State. Okay, and again, it's not like we haven't seen this in the NBA before. Look at what happened in the situation with the Bulls when they first brought on Phil Jackson. I mean, the coach before him was not even a bad coach. He managed to win some games, but didn't really elevate to the point where they were ready to win championships. And once Phil Jackson introduced that triangular offense, the Bulls took off. They took flight. And so the way that I look at Philadelphia and this whole structure and this whole quote-unquote process thing, it's not good. It's not good. And Philadelphia has a piss poor problem in their organization. Something that the front offices really need to start getting in check with. Because watching Brett Brown and watching his coaching method and his style, it's excruciating to watch. Because even in that first game, when Joel Embiid, he was fighting, he was fighting on the bench side, with Shake Milton. That was embarrassing. And you didn't have a leader there to break it up. And Joel Embiid, I'll be honest with you, he is such a talker. He's a real good player. But that is something that Philadelphia really needs to take a real hard look at. Who do you lean more of your trust on? Do you lean more of your trust on Joel Embiid? Do you lean more of your trust on Ben Simmons? Who do you really lean on? And the reason why, and for three impactful players that really changed the focus of this group, that was Drew Holiday, JJ Redick, and Jimmy Butler. All three of them left. JJ Redick and Jimmy Butler both voiced their opinion about Philadelphia. There is no leader in that locker room. There is no capable player who can be a leader in the in that clubhouse that can really change the style of play with this team. And as I've said before, Simmons and Embiid, this tandem don't work. It doesn't. Ben Simmons, he's got height on him, but he can't shoot. Okay, he can't shoot threes. We don't see him working more on his game with that. He is like Westbrook, only except the exception of things, Westbrook's very high motor. But even like similar, they both can't shoot. And which is why you got to have those reliable shooters. Jimmy Butler was one of them before he left. JJ Redick was an important catalyst before he left. And then you have, and even in Houston's position when you have Westbrook, that's why they have Harden. Because Harden could put up those threes. He's a scoring machine. But in Philadelphia's cases with this, it's not looking good for them. And they're getting to the point where they're going to be close to getting swept. I wouldn't be surprised that if they took game 4, because that is something that needs to be said and needed to make a statement that they could at least win one game of the series, but then they're not going to make it through. And Philadelphia, I just don't know what to think of them at this point. The fact that there's no leader in the clubhouse and the tandems between Simmons and Embiid. Listen, this tandem has been going on for years. This has been going on for years. There hasn't been any adjustment or development. And you want to talk about supporting casts, there are a couple of them. There may be about 2 of them that I can think of that really do make it work. But here's the other thing too. You got horrible contracts with Tobias Harris and Al Horford. Horrible contracts. And I will say this, that I think Al Horford is still a real good playoff player, but the contract does not add up that way. And neither does it with Tobias Harris either. And that is something where Philadelphia really needs to make a strong decision on it. There may be a trade in place, but listen, that's where they have to figure out who are they going to lean on most for this franchise. It's very shaky. It's risky, but they need to have the right head coach in place. They got to have the right guys in the front offices to really make that happen. Everybody's been talking about it. Elton Brand, they don't know what the hell the process is. They don't even know how exactly that this thing works. And yeah, altogether, the accountability for Tobias Harris and Al Horford, it's $289 million. You really think that Philadelphia is really going to swallow up every penny of it? I doubt that. But Philadelphia really needs to get themselves, they really need to get themselves in check. They really, really do. And like I mentioned about these tandems, like I mentioned with these tandems, Simmons and Embiid, Tatum and Brown, Kawhi and PG, LeBron and Anthony Davis, Mitchell and Gobert. There's a lot of these really good tandems. Luka and Porzingis. There are arguably a couple of teams that I know that these tandems work. Dallas is definitely one of them. If you watch throughout 3 games of the series, Doncic was on fire on all 3 of those games just before rolling his ankle. Okay, and he put up a triple-double last night. He was very impactful up into the game. Once the rolled ankle happened, it was unfortunate and they lost a player. But you know who stepped up? How about Tim Hardaway Jr.? He stepped up. Seth Curry stepped up. Lots of these real good shooters ended up stepping up. And Porzingis stayed in the game after being ejected in game 1. 2 and 3 were different stories, and he looked great. He looked great in those games. And let's not forget about Boban Marjanovic. Let's not forget about that guy. He has used a lot of his height to his advantage all throughout this series. That's why it's not an easy opponent that the Clippers are taking down. They're not. Mark Cuban's got this thing set, where he's got a real good supporting cast. And I think Dallas is going to be fun to watch for the next couple of years. I think that if they get another guy in the guard position, but it depends on it. I mean, I love what I'm seeing with Tim Hardaway, and I love what I'm seeing with Seth Curry. So that is something that I think Dallas is going to be. They got some potentials on them. That's what I'm happy for. Clippers, Paul George really needs to get going. He's way too cold. He is way too cold all throughout this series, and he's way too cold through the playoffs. He looked good in game 1, but then slowed his game down by game 2 and 3. His shots, none of them were going in the basket, and and he's also been racking up fouls. I don't know what the problem is. But Doc Rivers has a serious decision to make with that and how he's going to end up shifting it up. Boston's tandem with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they're looking great. Okay, and I've said this over again. This is without Kyrie Irving. Without Kyrie, Boston plays just fine. And the best thing of it is that Jason Tatum, in his rookie season, Kyrie was hurt. Gordon Hayward was hurt. Led the team to the Eastern Conference Final that year. And it shows you how much potentiality that Jason Tatum really does have and how Brad Stevens can make this thing work from his coaching perspectives and his coaching method. And that's what elevates other guys like Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and others to really elevate around him. They got a real good cast. And that is something that I've said multiple times over and over and over again. That I think, I just don't sleep on Boston for how offensive and defensive that they really are. They're the type of team in the Eastern Conference that is not to play with. Okay. So there was one comment here that I really, really liked. Is I think Philadelphia should trade Embiid and build around Simmons the way the Bucks built around Giannis. Get 3-point shooters, a solid second star, and Simmons' potential is fully activated. I agree. I really, really do agree. I do think that, and I've even said this too. I was the kind of person that I never gave up on Ben Simmons, but if you do trade away Joel Embiid and get 3-point shooter, you get shooters, 3 points, guys that shoot in the paint, and a solid second star to really elevate Ben Simmons' game. Yeah, maybe this will work. Maybe this will work for Philadelphia. And maybe here's where I'll lay down my process. I got to have good shooters. I've also got to have really good ball distributors. That I also got to have some that are willing to click on all cylinders from 1 through 4 quarters. That's the way that I got to look at it when it comes to Philadelphia. If you want a process so bad, there's my process. There is my process. How about the Lakers and Anthony Davis and LeBron James? LeBron has been there multiple times, 17th season already. And Anthony Davis, you know what the only problem is? He keeps disappearing in fourth quarters. He keeps disappearing in fourth quarters. And it pisses everybody off with that. That is where, AD, he's a really good player, but when it comes to fourth quarters, he's not good. Okay, I'm not saying he's not a really good player because I think he is, but I think it's just that one knock that you can have on Anthony Davis is fourth quarters are not his strong suit. And their benches with Alex Caruso, KCP, Dwight Howard, look, they got to make this thing work because you're facing against Portland with Dame, CJ McCollum, Yusuf Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside, and so many, and Carmelo Anthony. You know what's funny is that somebody mentioned to me about Carmelo Anthony, and they're like, "Are you really leaning on him right now?" Yes, because I wouldn't be saying that with sheer confidence if I was absolutely sure that what his gameplay is right now is the best. It is. My knock on Carmelo, as I said in my previous show, is not because of his talent and not because of his skill, but the fact of his decisions as a person, his maturity mindset. He didn't want to take the backup role, but he wasn't going to get any offers if he said no. The offers would have slimmed down, but Portland gave him that second chance, and Melo's playing really good because guys like Dame, CJ elevate his maturity. And that is where it made the decision where Melo, because Melo's going to be a future Hall of Famer, hands down. But to take a role like that, to helping to, because Melo has not won a championship. Melo has not won a championship. And how much do you want to bet that on the back of Dame and CJ's head, they're like, we got Melo on the squad. He's looking really good. We got to get that man a ring. How much do you want to bet that that's there on the back of their heads? That is what Portland, that's what they're on a mission for. And again, the series is going to go all the way to 7, but I'm going with Portland. And because, look, I like the Lakers. I like what they have in place. But sometimes when it comes to close games like that, especially in fourth quarter, you have got to have everything clicking. You've got to. For the last 12 minutes of play, you need to get going. You need to stay strong. And that's my thing on that series. And Milwaukee with Giannis and Chris Middleton, this thing don't work. Chris Middleton, he's a really good kid, but is oftentimes under pressure. Shots, not exactly the best that he takes. And if you look at some of his supporting cast, they're good, but they're not the same energetic defensive team like they were a year ago. And that's something that Milwaukee is right on thin ice when it comes to Giannis and where his potentialities are going to lead to, whether he stays or he goes. That's something where Milwaukee, if he goes, they're going to have to swallow this giant pill that they're not going to like. And they are not going to like. And that's where I think the opening market potentially for relocation might open back up if Giannis gets traded and if Giannis leaves. Finally, to me, Toronto. I mean, Toronto looks like a really, really good team. I'm not saying that they got the same energy like when they had Kawhi Leonard, but they do have a really, really good roster. Fred VanVleet's looking real good. Pascal Siakam, he emerged as a player. And you have a lot of real good role players in Toronto's roster that makes it work. And Nick Nurse, he's a damn good coach. He's capable of being one of the best, one of the top coaches in this league. And so, however Toronto favors out in this series is going to be a lot of fun to watch. But we've got plenty of basketball left in this playoff, and it's going to be so much fun. I'm going to take a break here, but I'm going to return back here in the Snake Sports Talk Show. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to the Snake Sports Talk Show. We are so glad to have you guys all on here. Bronco Fanatic, why does no one else show up? This I really do appreciate it. Bronco Fanatic, by the way, guys, he's one of the number one fans here up on the show, and I really do appreciate the love and support he brings here to the show and even to the network. Really, really do appreciate it. Like I said, like the live feed, share this with your friends. Definitely give them something to talk about as well. And we appreciate it. We are on the road to 200 subscriptions, honestly, by the end of this month. And we really will appreciate everything that you guys would do to help promote, to help spread the word, and get this network up and running. We really do appreciate it, you guys. There are a couple of things that I think are going on here on the weekend. Let me see. Because I'm getting a couple of things set up from here. But you know what was interesting? And something that I do want to point out is the NFL did make history a couple days ago. So the Washington football team. Okay, the Washington football team. I can't lump in saying that. I really can't. I used to love saying Washington Redskins, but now it's the Washington football team, and I don't know what their names are going to be. But hey, I'm gonna have to live with it. But all jokes aside, so they hired on their new president of football operations, and this is the first one in history. Now, what is that going to do? What's that now going to be the movement for the NFL? So this was about 5 days ago that the Washington football team had hired on Jason Wright as their team's president. And Wright made history in 5 days. He is the first African-American president of a football team. And I know a lot of people have their concerns about why there are not a whole lot of minorities in these offices, whether it's ownership, presidents, coaching, lots of things, and there was so much of just, because we're surrounded by the Rooney Rule, and that's the one thing that in the NFL, and how I kind of weigh this out, because it was a little tricky for me, but to me, I'm the type of person that I'm very innovative. I'm open to every single ideas. It doesn't matter regardless of anything whatsoever. And yes, we know Washington has had an awful lot of, they've had such a horrible offseason. They had a lot of on and off the field incidents, so much more. We know all about that, which is why that I think they needed to have grownups in the right room. They need to have people in the right offices, in the right places at the right time. And Dan Snyder, I mean, he's just looking embarrassed by how this team's operations really has been. But they're hoping for some really good things from Jason Wright to making this happen. But this is kind of my thought with this whole thing in the NFL and over the years, is that if you look over the years and so many coaches and so many other staff members, okay, I remember watching coaching from Lovie Smith. I remember watching Lovie Smith coach. Really good. He was a really good guy, really good defensive. And he was a part of a defensive tandem with Lance Briggs, Brian Urlacher, Charles Tillman, lots of really, really good defensive guys. And, there were times where he made this thing work and got the team to a Super Bowl 41. Unfortunately, didn't end up winning that final game, but he was a really good coach. And he's currently coaching in Illinois. And I was very surprised of just the move from there. But I get it. Things didn't really truly work out in the end and wasn't capable of the job. Let's look at some of the other coaches here in the league. I mean, Anthony Lynn, I keep saying this for the Chargers. I think Anthony Lynn is a really good coach. Because I'll be honest with you. Because over the years, I will still never understand the decision that they made letting Marty Schottenheimer go after a 14-2 season. That was the worst. That was the worst thing that could happen. And then in comes Norv Turner, who Norv Turner, I'll admit, is a real good offensive coordinator, but in a head coaching position, there were a lot of decisions that I did not think were sound. I mean, they did get to an AFC championship game, and Phillip Rivers had to play with a torn ACL in that game against New England, and New England was on a mission of perfection. That was not an easy game to play, but it was disappointing to watch, and it was hard. It was a hard pill to swallow. But once Turner's reign of power was over, then it was on to Mike McCoy, and I don't know what the hell that was. Mike McCoy, that was terrible. It was horrible. And then in comes Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn, the first year, went 9-7, and then totaled it up at 12-4. Now, granted, they hit a cliff and went 5-11, but I keep telling this, and a lot of people keep laughing at me. But I'm still confident that they're going to go 11-5. I still believe that they can go 11-5. Okay, the offense is built around them. The defensive tandems. And Melvin Ingram, earlier in the news, took an adjusted contract. And the reason why that is because if the Chargers aren't in engaging contract talks right now, there's a reason behind this. Because they feel like that the group that they have, they can win a championship. They feel like they can win a championship. And a lot of speculations are, a lot of people are like, I don't know what kind of coach Anthony Lynn is. Oh, I'll tell you what he is. He's a motivator. He's a motivator. He's a fun guy. And to be honest, the running back group has never looked stronger than it does right now. It really, really does. Since he arrived, the running backs have really played well. The offenses, I think, really looked good. And it's only a matter of time until this team pops and they start to win championships. But the point I'm trying to make is that when it comes to a lot of these minority coaches, minority staff members, I'm all in on very innovative, a lot of innovative decisions. I really, really am. Because I do believe that everybody does deserve chances, depending on it, depending on where you come from, how you work, what your ethic is. If your ethic is sound, because what I see and what my gut feeling tells me are usually always how I process this. I mean, hell, this is how I made this show. Because I wouldn't be talking about certain segments and certain things unless if I seen with my eyes, trusted with my gut, and knew exactly what I was going to say every Saturday, Sunday morning. That's usually how I run. And so when it comes to some of these coaches and staff members, I'm fine with it. My only expectation is show me you can coach. Show me that you can run the offices. Show me that you can do all these things. I'm not asking for talent. I'm not asking for all of this. I'm looking for hard workers and grinders, guys who think outside the box and make things work. So, and I mean, in Washington, they've got an awful lot of work to do. But I'm hoping that things go right for Jason Wright. I really, really do. And I think this is going to be a fun thing. I think it's going to be hard, but it's going to be interesting, and we'll see exactly where it pans out from here. Time now for the hot press. So some interesting news here happening around in the NFL, as earlier Friday, Earl Thomas was sent home after a fiery on-the-field argument with safety Chuck Clark. So the incident is that Earl Thomas was sent home. And apparently how this sparked up was just a missed communication and an assignment by Thomas. And both him and Clark ended up yelling at each other up on the sidelines, and doesn't really look to be good. So Earl Thomas ended up leaving at that point of Friday night. So after that, just, and this is one of the things that you look at in camp. I mean, you look at some of these things up in camp. Baltimore's got a lot of expectations on them because they're a stacked roster, both offensively and defensively. Just because of just a miscommunication and an argument does not mean that it has to be a huge, big deal. But Baltimore, I still do believe they're going to be a competitive team. Now, a lot of people are thinking they're going to go undefeated. I don't, to be honest. You don't have a preseason, and it's kind of hard to really speculate certain teams when you don't have a preseason in place. I think they can go 14-2, maybe 13-3. I mean, if we had a preseason, maybe 15-1, but I think 14-2, 13-3 makes sense for me with Baltimore without a preseason. So, like I mentioned here before, the LA Chargers and defensive end Melvin Ingram have agreed to a restructured content that's guaranteeing the last year of his pay. And that is $14 million this is the last year of the 4-year, $64 million contract deal. Now here's what I ended up saying from here is that, 31-year-old, really, really good defensive end, and is definitely noted as one of the best, tandems between him and Joey Bosa at the defensive front line. That is a scary presence. And, Melvin Ingram had 2 really good years, 2015 and 2017, where he's posted up 10.5 sacks, close to 50 solo tackles. And he's the type of guy that packs a punch. He comes in with the power, comes in with the strength, and he stops a lot of these run games. He stops the run games along with Bosa. Bosa comes in at the charge, and he's there to be the secondary guy in case of anything falters. But he's real strong. Poses up a lot of threat when it comes to forced fumbles and fumble recoveries. So he has tendencies to get to the football. And so now a lot of people have the question is he worth the money? Only time will tell on Melvin Ingram if they're going to keep him. I honestly think they should, because I think having that tandem, maybe I would restructure to maybe 2-3 years if I was Tom Telesco in that general managing position. But I would not pay high top dollars. That's a huge obstacle. But I do trust that Telesco and his resources, that he's going to make this deal happen. And I think it's going to be one that's affordable for both ends of the table. So the Clippers ended up winning last night, 122. And everybody was red hot. Kawhi Leonard was really good. Shamet came off the bench, and he put up a lot of points. Lou Williams and a lot of others, but a lot of speculation right now about what's going on with the Clippers, and most importantly is Paul George. And Paul George just had an off night. Paul George was not looking the same. And so this is what he had to say post game after the win for the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm no James Harden. I'm no, that's not my knack, is to shoot the ball and score the ball. I can, and I pride myself on being effective on both ends. But it's gonna be nights like this where I just can't make a shot, and I can't allow that to affect my game. I still got to be aggressive. I still got to try to make plays. I'm going to do everything I can to win a ball game. And some nights it's just going to be like that. I'm not going to make shots, but I got to find a way to make an impact.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with what he's saying with that, but it has been quite the struggle for him. I mean, he was shooting 3 of 16 on the field. And 1 for 8 at 3-point attempts. And like I mentioned, when it comes to duo tandems in the NBA, and especially in playoff mode, you got to make sure that everybody's all on the same page. That's not just the superstar, that's also the co-superstar. They both have to be up on the same page in order for them to win games. You can't do it as, one puts in 80% and the other puts in 20. He does sound optimistic on where where he sits at right now. But I love the fact that he threw the knock that he's no James Harden. And that's always kind of that's always the speculation around when it comes to the Houston Rockets. But Paul George, again, he's a real good player. We just got to get the times like Anthony Davis where he has to stop disappearing in some of these moments in the game. And that's where you got to finish up strong. And that's why I was always very optimistic when it comes to second half Paul George, because I know in the second half you're going to get a completely different player. We saw that in game 1, but 2 and 3 were not so great games. And I think that is exactly where Paul George really needs to focus more on and really get a feel for it. And finally, Mark Davis ended up putting a little promo here for the Las Vegas Raiders. And as they welcome into their newly finished Allegiant Stadium, as it's all ready to go, looks great, looks beautiful. Mark Davis ended up calling it here, as he said, quote unquote, "Welcome to the Death Star, where our opponents' dreams come to die." And so pretty good, pretty strong quote from the owner, Mark Davis here. And so from everybody here going into their first practices, they actually had their first scrimmages for the Las Vegas Raiders. So this is going to be interesting to watch. I do love the build of the stadium, and I think it's going to be great. I really, really do wish that there would be fans involved. And it's tough. It's really, really tough at this point, especially with this pandemic and everything else happening. But a lot of optimistic things for the Raiders. But good thing is they're up there in camp. They're here in Vegas. They're actually getting used to, the culture, the vibe. And, as to me, as a guy who's lived in Las Vegas my entire life, born and raised, we're the type of people that we're very welcoming when it comes to tourist things. When tourists come in, because we do it all the time, tourists come into Vegas, we greet them in open arms, we show them all around, and they have a great time. They have a great time with their stay here, and that's kind of something that the community and the city has really done for the Las Vegas Raiders. And so lots of really good optimistic stuff for them. I don't think they'll be as a big time team going into next season, but I do think this is going to be interesting from a fan base point of view. Yes, I am a Golden Knights fan. I'm a diehard Golden Knights fan personally. And yeah, it's super hot. I mean, we were 120 all throughout the week, and it's terrible. But like how they did with the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the difference was this was an expanded franchise. This was something that was born and bred here in Vegas. But they do have the same similarities when it came to fan bases. They opened them and greeted them in open arms. They introduced a lot of the players. They introduced a lot of the coaching staffs. So I feel like they're going to get a really good welcoming coming into next season. And we'll see exactly how that all plays out. But there was your hot press. All right, so coming up here to finish up on the show, as I mentioned, and I do promise it, is I mentioned my best for last as round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs is over. We have our teams. It's set. We don't have the scheduled dates yet, but we're going to end up posting that up soon on our social media page. But we're ready for round 2, folks. And round 2 is not going to be easy. It's going to be a lot of tough grind. I love the matchups on all of them. Oh, my God. These matchups are really, really good. And this is what's making the playoffs even better to watch. But I'm going to speculate on all of those games in round 2 coming up next. You don't want to miss it on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I really do want to thank all of you guys for tuning in, watching the show here. Like this live stream, share the live stream with your family, with your friends, and so many people. Spread the word out about the show and spread the word out about the network as well. We really do appreciate it. As we're wrapping things up in the final 10 minutes of the show, really do appreciate you guys being here. Definitely look at all the social media links here below. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We post up daily on all of our social media platforms. That is myself and also the Spotlight Sports Network as well. Definitely check us out. Subscribe to the Snake Sports Talk Show and the Spotlight Sports Network on our YouTube pages as well, and hit the bell button for all the latest notifications on future shows. Also, stay in touch with all of us here. We're always on the chats, so definitely keep in touch with that. And also follow me on Spotify and Anchor. We have a lot of podcast shows that we're trying to start up as well. And I do have my podcast show as well that you can check out in case if, you guys missed the live stream show. Don't worry. We got you covered. We've got our podcast show also. And these are just basically, big time recaps of the show. And yes, Discord. All right. Discord's also another really good spot as well. I got to look more into that. But all right. So as I promised, my best for last in this show, round one's over. Round one is over, and we got a lot out of round one. And by the way, 0 positive tests. Hockey's looking great. And I'm hoping the same exact thing for the NBA. Things have been looking really, really good. And I love the way that this playoff atmosphere has really, really gone about. So round one's over in hockey. And we have all of our teams. That is the Knights, Canucks, Avalanche, Stars, Flyers, Islanders, Lightning, and the Bruins. So those are the next teams, the Great Eight, that are here in round two. And it's going to be interesting to watch. And so I'm going to break down all of the series. First, I'm going to start in the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to start with the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Boston Bruins. So Tampa Bay, as I said, they got that chip off of their shoulder against Columbus, winning that series, and they've looked really, really good. The guy who has been the high catalyst for this franchise has been Braden Point. Young kid, very high-motored scorer, and Nikita Kucherov has really been the type of guy who's been the catalyst as well when it comes to puck distribution, assists, and also taking, matters into his own hands as well if he's got to score goals on his own. But Steven Stamkos also remaining in his captain status to keeping this team alive. And Vasilevsky, he had at least a couple of some off plays, but he has never looked any better. And I think he looks really determined. And he's good. And they're going up against the Boston team without Tuukka Rask, and Hyrsel Heilich really has stepped up in the big role for the Bruins. And this offense, I will say, has been a little shaky, but not to the point where it's a panic mode. But I do believe that this series, and this is multiple times that these two have met in the playoffs, and Tampa Bay's been figuring out Boston's number, and sometimes off and on. But I do see this series particularly going to 7, and I do think that the Tampa Bay Lightning will make it through. It's not going to be an easy matchup whatsoever with these two, but it's definitely going to be something exciting where your guys are going to see a lot of real good puck distribution. You're going to see a lot of aggressive scoring plays. And I think Braden Point is going to continue to lead the way for this young team. And by the way, don't sleep on one guy named Blake Coleman. I mean, he's a fast skater. He is very aggressive on the offensive sides of the ice, and something that can really be the catalyst for the Lightning. I think it's going to go into 7, and I'm going to take Tampa Bay here in this game. And finally, you got the Philadelphia Flyers against the New York Islanders. And so both these teams, let's start with the Flyers. They came in red hot, and I truly think that the Philadelphia, as I said, they're my sleeper team. amongst Tampa Bay that they may be the team that if either one of them get into the Stanley Cup final, that's a really good potential team. And Philadelphia has really clicked on with a bunch of real good role players. I mean, Jacob Voracek, Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, and even Travis Konechny. These guys have really panned out on their offensive zones, but it's really all been about goaltending and defense for the Philadelphia Flyers. They've really made a huge difference. Carter Hart had back-to-back shutout games that gave them those big leads against Montreal, and it eventually paid off in the end, where now there's no Jordan Binnington moving on. Now you've got another youngster, Carter Hart, who's going to make all the potentials for Philadelphia, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch as they're facing against a tough defensive New York Islanders team that, again, don't sleep on them. Semyon Varlamov has really looked sharp in his goaltending skills, and the other thing of it is, too, they're very defensive on the ice, and when they want to score, they got some real good scorers. Jordan Eberle. I haven't seen a whole lot of Anders Lee throughout this whole series, but Matthew Barzal is a big-time puck distributor that opens up spacing and is a guy that is willing to rack up assists for the Islanders. This, I think, is not going to be an easy series. I think this one's going to go in 7, to be honest. And I'm going to have to go with my colleague in this one. I'm going to have to go with the Philadelphia Flyers to go into the Eastern Conference Final. Again, anything can happen in these types of defensive games. I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the hard grind. I love, like, those close matchups in each of the minutes of the periods. And there's a lot of physicality up in this game. So you're going to face that an awful lot when you're watching this series. But I do take 7, and I do take the Flyers to make it to the Eastern Conference to face against Tampa Bay. All right, so now let's move to the Western Conference now. The Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. Both these teams are very competitive in their own ways. Colorado in that matchup against Calgary was one that I truly had seen. Arizona was not going to make it through. They were never going to make it through. This was a team that, regardless of having Taylor Hall, Clayton Keller, and Phil Kessel, they still couldn't get things right. They could not face off against a top offensive line like the Colorado Avalanche. Mikko Rantanen, Gabriel Landeskog, and Nathan MacKinnon. These guys are very competitive, and they make things happen. And that is something that has really deteriorated Arizona and all ends of the ice. But that is something where they're facing off against Dallas, who, by the way, don't sleep on Dallas's defensive potentials. John Klingberg's been looking really good on the defensive ends. Miro Heiskanen has been the sleeper for Dallas, and Ben Bishop is still continuing to show his presence and his experience behind the net for the Stars. But I really do expect that Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn is going to make big noise. But if you're Dallas, you need to shut down that first line and maybe the second at all costs. They can come at you with some offensive aggression, and that is one where they need to shut it down. I'm going to take this game in 7, but I truly think that we may see Colorado move forward into the Western Conference Final. I just think that it's going to be a tough grind. Both teams are going to play exceptionally well, but at the end of the day, I think Colorado's first line is just going to be too much for Dallas to handle. But they're going to make it all the way through in 7, and I think Colorado's going to make it through. And finally, Vegas against Vancouver. So Vegas moved on. They're still a red-hot team. They only suffered one loss. One loss in this bubble. They moved on, and this was a clean slate for them. They look like a team that is ready to win it all. And they're facing off against a Vancouver team who they're on a mission. They are on a mission to really make a difference in the playoffs. And they got a lot of really good offensive guys. Tyler Toffoli, Brock Besser, JT Miller, and Elias Pettersson. Pedersen right now is the top points guy in the playoffs so far, and he's been red hot. And that is somebody that the Vegas Golden Knights really need to shut down with puck distribution, and he's a big time assist machine. And there are a couple of real good players that Vancouver has that you can't sleep on. Quinn Hughes, the rookie, is doing really, really well on his defensive ends of the ice. But I do see this game. I do see this matchup going in 6. And Vegas taking it. I think Vegas, they're on a mission. They want to win it all. Vancouver, I like them, but in some games, and I've watched it all throughout the regular season, Jacob Markstrom can sometimes have holes in his game. He's a good goaltender, but he's also a guy that's really worked up a lot of the workload. And it sometimes has deteriorated in some ways and has opened up holes for opposing teams to score off of. But I think Vegas, up to this point, they're going to make it through. They're going to make this through in 6 games. They're going to go to the Western Conference Final, and they're going to have a final bout with the Colorado Avalanche. And I think that is going to be so much fun to watch. So there you have it on my best for last. There were a couple of changes that I had, even in the brackets, but I'm very, very optimistic on all these teams. So I truly think it's going to be Philadelphia in 7, Tampa Bay in 7, Colorado in 7, and Vegas in 6. And then it's going to be Vegas, Colorado in the Western Conference Final, and Tampa Bay and Philadelphia. Both of my favorite Eastern Conference predicted teams facing off in the Eastern Conference Final. I have to ask my colleague about that later on after this live stream, what she thinks about that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to see a lot of physicality. You're going to see a lot of shots being scored. But this is going to be a fun second round, guys. Lots of defense, lots of physicality, but this is a tough grind from here on out. And we're only getting closer to eyeballing Sir Stanley. And I can't wait for that. All righty, guys. Thank you so much for joining in here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Like I said, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all the social media platforms. Join in on all of the live chats as well. We really do appreciate you guys engaging in. Like this live stream, share this live stream with your friends and family. Also, subscribe to the Snake Sports Talk Show and the Spotlight Sports Network on our YouTube channels as well. We really do appreciate it. And also follow us on Spotify for all of the podcast episodes. Have a great weekend. Have a great Saturday. Take care of yourselves. Be safe, be healthy, and we will see you tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Take care, everybody. Have a good morning.